Joining me now is Fernand Amandi, Democratic pollster and strategist, and Angela Rye, former executive director and counsel of the Congressional Black Caucus. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with a little bit more into these allegations. Fernand, you know Florida, you know this character very well. The Washington Post reports that Gaetz is said to have boasted of his access to women provided by the very friend who's now charged in the sex trafficking case. 3 people involved in the 2018 gubernatorial campaign of Ron DeSantis said that Gaetz, an advisor who later helped lead DeSantis' transition team, repeatedly suggested that events be scheduled in a way that would end the night in a college town. So there's the 3 amigos, DeSantis, Gaetz, and perhaps this friend that's now being charged with sex trafficking. What the hell is going on in Florida, Fernand?
Joy, you remember that 80s movie, Gremlins? Well, yeah. Florida is what happens when you feed the Trump Republican leaders after midnight. I mean, it's just a chaotic, untenable situation. And to explain Matt Gaetz, I mean, you kind of said the answer there yourself. He knows that he is just one of many Florida men, and we have the scandal du jour happen here. And when you're competing with the likes of the state of Florida, like Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, and the Trump family who now lives here, I mean, he's trying to hide between the shadows of the scandal and just try and live and fight another day in the classic Roger Stone style, as you saw. But fundamentally, what this is going to come down to is his alienation of so many other Republican members of Congress. The knives are privately out for Matt Gaetz, and I think he will be out of Congress by the end of this calendar month.
Yeah, speaking of Washington and alienating fellow Republicans, Angie, let's talk about Liz Cheney. Which Republican did not get censured or thrown under by her party for going against Trump? Liz Cheney. She's from a pretty powerful family. Here's Matt Gaetz thinking he was going to come for her in her state of Wyoming.
Liz Cheney calls herself a leader in Washington, but to me, being a leader does not mean winning an election amongst a bunch of politicians. Being a leader doesn't even mean that you've lived a flawless personal life. I can tell you, I sure haven't.
Yeah, clearly you haven't. Is Liz Cheney at home saying, let Matt Gaetz know it was me?
Or maybe she's just saying, look at these chickens coming home to roost, right? Like this is that kind of a thing. What's so fascinating about this is, Roger Stone's tactics and his strategies have often proved to work, surprisingly. And I think the only thing we can attribute it to is white male privilege. But in this instance, maybe those chickens are also coming home to roost because this stuff is continuing to backfire. One thing that I noticed today, Joy, about this press conference from Nathan Nelson, who is a former Gaetz staffer, he happened to mention that he offers free services around military advisory work while he's in the private sector. I don't know if they've never heard of congressional ethics, but there may be some concerned citizens out there who want to call 202-225-9739 to report an inappropriate gift, right? There are these kinds of things that are happening. So sometimes when you find yourself trying to clean up a mess, you create more mess. The fact that he was in the Florida state legislature opposing revenge porn while showing off videos of naked women on his phone, also problematic. And he's talking about he's not a monk. Sir, we know. We're just trying to figure out if you have any moral fiber in your being.
Yeah, and just trying to get him to stop using the word sex. Like, if he would just stop saying that over and over, we don't want to hear him ever say that. So just stop saying that. Let's just show a picture. Here's a little selfie with Stone, Gaetz, and Greenberg in 2017. It is interesting, Fernand, how Florida has sort of become the kind of choke point for this certain kind of politician, including now Donald Trump, who I guess is now sort of crowned the king of Palm Beach, the king of Florida. And all of these scandals all seem to kind of be interconnected. The kind of guy Ron DeSantis is, who's like only the rich are allowed to get their vaccines first and the rest of you plebs can get it later. That kind of politics. I don't know how Florida keeps breeding that, but DeSantis is then seen as the next big thing nationally for the Republican Party. There's something the Republican Party likes about that kind of politics. I don't get it.
Well, I mean, Joy, part of the problem here, and it's a little ominous, it's a little frightening to contemplate, but Florida is a laboratory, in a sense, for what the Republican Party or the GQP would look like if Donald Trump was able to win a second term or if the Republicans capture the nation again in 2024. They are trying to create this quasi-autocracy that all of the conditions already exist in the state. They have total control of the legislature. They have total control of the courts. We're seeing now an environmental catastrophe happening in Manatee County, where because of total deregulation, which has been the currency of the realm here for the Republican Party over the last generation or so, there is basically just infrastructural calamity taking place. When you add to that, though, there is also a sense of impunity for a lot of these folks here. And my fear and my concern is, as Florida begins to continue to become this state that is fortified as a Republican state and a model for the future, you're going to see them start to export this and copy some of the worst practices like we've seen them do in copying the Georgia voter law. That's already in place here. They're going to try and do more things like that. It's very scary for the future. And that's why while we joke about Florida man and the hashtag because Florida, it is a very dangerous place because it is the front line for the Republican autocracy of the future right now.
Well, and also, Angela, you know, we're also seeing the Republican Party sort of devolve into sort of one big grift, right? Or maybe it's just been that way. We're only now noticing it. I mean, the fact that the big lie that produced, you know, 5 dead police officers, dozens of police officers injured, you know, all of the calamity and sort of the disgrace of the United States around the world, we now know was also part of the grift to get those people to give more money so that Trump could pay back the previous people he grifted. I wonder at some point, do you think that this sort of management of people's demographic panic to get money from them, does it run out of gas at some point? Do people say, you know what, I'm tired of brown scare and black scare, I'm giving you money because of it?
You know, Joy, what I hope happens is that people stop running towards that because it makes them feel better and run towards the truth, even if the truth hurts. So, for example, today, the Heritage Foundation has this tweet about, you know, Joe Biden, this big, scary socialist tax plan with the, you know, the biggest tax increases ever. Y'all forgot to talk about the biggest tax cuts ever, right? And I think that at some point, this stuff all has to balance out. You know, at some point, folks have to stop voting their dreams and voting their interests. There is a distinction. Y'all aren't there yet. I know that y'all probably want to be rich and be partying out here with Matt Gaetz, but there's consequences for that. Right? Yeah. And on top of that, you have to understand that you may have more in alignment with a poor Black or brown person. You may have more in alignment with somebody that is in the South and you're in the, you know, the Midwest, or you're in Joe Manchin's state, right? And so that means that you have to vote in alignment with what is in your best interest, not what they're telling you. The stuff that they're telling you is not even true. And so shame on Heritage Foundation for the tweet today. And I hope that people will start focusing on what is true and what is right rather than on scaring people. The fear-mongering in politics has turned dangerous and has been that way for some time, but we're only going to continue to see it increase if folks don't really start walking in the full knowledge of the truth.
No, absolutely. I think about Mississippi, right? A state that is starving for infrastructure. And the governor there is like, just cut taxes. They already have their taxes cut to the bone. They have Jackson, the capital. They don't have water. I mean, and he doesn't want that. You don't want that. You just want to cut taxes. Very quickly, Fernand, I don't understand this just from a political science point of view, because at a certain point, don't you want water? Don't you want rail to work? Don't you want infrastructure? I don't understand the Republican position on saying no to that.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. It's an untenable position. But to your point, it's a cash grab. It's a grift. It's a Ponzi scheme and a pyramid scheme here where they're just trying to do as much as possible in a short period of time, and then the consequences be damned later. But keep in mind, the hope for the future is Florida continues to be a competitive state. Even though the presidential results weren't as close as some folks thought, in midterms, we saw Andrew Gillum only lose the governorship by about 30,000 votes. Bill Nelson only lost by about 15,000 votes. If the Democrats do not give up on Florida and make a real play, they can turn things around. But if not, Joy, you got to look at this as the cradle of the Republican Party of the future, because all the major candidates are coming out of this state for the Republicans.
Yeah, all right. Well, we got to debate that one, because they got to find the right candidates. See, they got to find the right candidates. It's very hard to win in Florida. Fernand Amandi, Angela Rye, but you're the pollster, not me, so I'm going to go with your wisdom on that. Thank you both very much.